Thursday will mark 20 years since the Port Arthur mass shooting when Martin Bryant killed 35 people using semi-automatic weapons. His actions shattered the lives of hundreds of people and did truly leave a nation in shock.
I was shot in my back, in my shoulder. I'm still having the surgery 20 years later, okay? 20 years later. Think of the cost of that to the country. I don't have a life anymore.
The Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, instigated sweeping gun reforms, banning all automatic and semi-automatic firearms and required strict licensing for gun ownership. Since those laws came into place, there has not been a single mass shooting in Australia.
But gun control advocates are saying that might change. Earlier this week, Senator Ricky Muir made headlines when he posted a video testing out a new rapid-fire rifle.
And this is an Adler A110 12-gauge lever-action shotgun. Or, if you ask certain aspects of the media, it is a new technology designed to circumvent the National Firearm Agreement and is a high-powered semi-automatic death machine.
The Senator says this shouldn't be in the same category as a semi-automatic weapon because it requires a manual reload, but advocates say it shoots just as quickly.
Now, we should point out that the 7-round version of the weapon is currently banned in Australia, but 5-round versions seem to have been flooding the market. So, do the gun laws need to be strengthened once again to ban this too, or are we safe enough as is? Joining us to discuss is the President of Gun Control Australia, Sam Lee, from the Blue Mountains in New South Wales. In studio, we have Senator David Leyonhjelm, New South Wales MP for the Shooters and Fishers Party, Robert Borsak, and former Labor leader Mark Latham. Good morning to you all. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Now, firstly to you, Sam, 20 years on from that terrible massacre at Port Arthur, where are we on gun control in your view?
Look, our gun laws have taken a bit of a battering over the 20-year period. We've seen a watering down of quite significant aspects of our laws, including the abolition of the criminal record checks, ability to shoot unlicensed at clubs, and now the introduction of this Adler shotgun. It's quite a sad occasion in many aspects.
David Leyonhjelm, you're opposed in many ways to the current policy, and you spoke to the America's National Rifle Association to warn gun owners in the US not to let their government tighten gun laws. Let's have a quick listen to what you had to say.
We are a nation of victims. You cannot own a gun for self-defence. Doesn't matter what the circumstances, doesn't matter how big the threat, you cannot defend yourself. Look at what Australia did. It's a defenceless country these days. I'm absolutely in awe of the success of the NRA at holding back the tide, and it never gives an inch. We love the NRA here in Australia amongst us gunners, and in fact we rely on you guys to also help us hold the line in Australia.
Senator, you also said that Australia's gun laws haven't made the slightest bit of difference. Now, in the 18 years leading up to the gun laws in 1996, an average of 617 people were killed by guns each year in Australia. Since that time, the average has fallen to 266 people. That's a significant difference. So how do you make that claim?
Well, what was happening before 1996 was that the rate of firearm deaths was declining at a certain rate, had been for a couple of decades. After 1996, the rate continued to decline at the same rate. It did not, the rate of decline didn't change. So there's been a steady reduction in firearms deaths over many decades, probably about 40 years. 20 years before 1996, the rate was falling. 20 years after 1996, the rate was falling at the same level. So if you take 1996 and now, yes, there are fewer firearm deaths per year. That's true, but to claim that that was due to the Howard gun laws suggests that that wouldn't have happened anyway.
But I looked at all the figures for the years, and you say it's a steady decline. In fact, after a couple of years after the gun laws, it was quite a sharp decline, and it has remained at about, 1/3 the rate of deaths by guns in the years before the gun laws.
If you graph them on a long linear line and look at the rate of deaths per head of population, so you can't take absolute numbers because population's going up as well. If you take it as a rate per head of population, the rate before 1996 and the rate after 1996 in terms of decline of firearms-related homicides is exactly the same. Can I also pick you up on a point in your introduction? There's been no massacres in Australia. That's not using guns. That's not actually quite true. There's been quite a lot. Depends what you call a massacre, but we had 5 killed, the Hunt family, in 2014 in Lockhart, New South Wales. We've had lots of massacres involving 3 individuals.
Are you doing all of these with guns?
Yes, with guns. Yes, with guns. We've had plenty of them. This argument that since 1996 we've had no massacres, therefore it must be true, is not accurate.
And
Sam,
these
how do you
domestic
respond to that?
situations.
Sorry, Sam, how would you respond to that?
Yes, well, the gun deaths were declining when 1996 occurred. However, they have accelerated since the gun laws were introduced. We have had no mass shootings in Australia since the gun laws have been introduced. We've had reductions in suicides, which was a huge gun problem in Australia. We've also had reduction in the number of handgun incidences across Australia. So it's been a very important aspect of our gun laws in Australia that we've had such a significant reduction in gun violence
Well,
in
how
this
do we
country.
define mass shootings is one question.
Given, you gave this pitch to the NRA saying that the US government shouldn't tighten their gun controls, but we've just seen another mass shooting over in the US yesterday, another 8 people killed. In the US, a person is 20 times more likely to be killed by a gun than here in Australia. So, Mark, I'll put this to you. Is that something we should be emulating? A lot of Australians are saying don't soften our gun control laws because we're going to end up like the US, where every week it's not even newsworthy anymore because they happen with such frequency.
Well, I think there are many fine aspects of American society, but if you ask the average Australian what's the very worst thing about the United States, they'd say the incidence of public shooting massacres. And Andrew was asking how do we define a massacre? Well, David's quoting incidents there, tragic, that amount to murder-suicide within a family.
Domestic situation.
What's happened in Australia, if you define the massacre as happening in a public place, then up pre-1996 we had them in Australia, terribly, in shopping centres, at tourist attractions, most notably and tragically at Port Arthur. Since then, in the 20 years since, we haven't had a shooting massacre in a public place. Our schools have been safe, unlike the United States. Our shopping centres have been safe. Our tourist attractions have been safe, unlike America. I mean, this is a real benefit for public safety and well-being in Australia that we shouldn't possibly jeopardise by relaxing gun laws and going down the crazy path of the United States.
Rob Borsak, I mean, obviously we don't need to guess in some ways where you stand on this issue, given who you represent. The most recent research shows that 40% of Australians think that we've got our gun laws right. 45% think they should be even tougher. Doesn't that suggest that the public has no appetite for weakening gun laws?
No, I don't think that suggests that at all. I think and what we've come out with today is talking about it. We actually need a Royal Commission into what happened at Port Arthur. A lot of the debate that's going on is well-founded and the discussion is important. But in the end, what we really do need to see is proper closure after what happened at Port Arthur.
Have we not?
With respect, haven't we done that?
a lot of that
I mean,
already?
that seems like...
Robert, what happened at Port Arthur that we don't know about already?
I think there's a lot that happened at Port Arthur that we probably don't know about, and it's got nothing to do with conspiracy theories, as you're inferring. We simply do need, as a nation, to go through the processes, understand the facts, understand the motivation for what really were knee-jerk reaction laws at the time. Whether you believe, as I don't, that they were well-based is another issue.
Well,
You need
a
a Royal
lunatic got hold
Commission
of
to
a
know
semi-automatic weapon
Can I
and
come
slaughtered
in here?
innocent people.
Well, hang on a
That's what
second.
happened.
The semi-automatic weapons aren't there now, and what we're doing is we're debating...
thank goodness. Thank goodness.
And we're debating based on emotion, which is important, but we understand people who have been through that process, and we saw it the other day on the Insight program, that poor lady is still grieving, that
Sure.
poor lady is still physically
not
and
just
mentally
the only-
suffering.
You would say, Sam, that
Can
the
I-
kind of rifles that we're talking about now in potentially loosening the gun laws can have much the same effect as that kind of semi-automatic weapon, right?
That's correct. These are what we would call rapid-fire firearms. They can take 6 cartridges within their magazine. They've sold around 7,000 of these weapons already across Australia. They are very different to existing lever-action shotguns, and that's why they're so popular.
And how long does it take to reload one of these?
We don't want rapid-fire firearms in Australia because they're the type of firearms that cause massacres here in Australia. We said no to rapid-fire firearms back in 1996, and we must stand up for our gun laws now, here today. We should be proud of them. We've come such a long way. We've come so far. Let's make sure that we don't go back to 1996. Let's make sure we don't have any more massacres here in Australia.
One of Samantha's basic assumptions is that universal background checks have somehow rather been softened in Australia. Certainly that's not the case. In fact, universal background checking is probably one of the primary reasons that we haven't had a massacre at all, because the guns today are in the hands of people who've been checked, who've been police checked, and who are good citizens.
But your party has said that the waiting time on a gun licence is too long, and during that time we are doing those checks. You've been agitating to restrict the waiting time, to bring it down.
No, that's absolutely not true.
Well, that's what happened on the Inside program the other day.
John Howard has said
that's not
that
true.
4 states are looking at watering down the waiting period, the cooling off period between applying for and purchasing a gun.
You can't
so
believe.
I think, well, I can.
You can't believe what John Howard says.
But I can believe him on that.
Back to this
because
gun.
he's done good for the country.
How would he know? How would he know?
Well, he says 4 states. Well, he's well connected inside the Liberal Party, obviously, and he says 4 states are looking at watering down the provisions.
David Lyle, do you want to say something?
Yes, look, the assumption about the Adler is...
Just hold on a second, Sam, sorry. We're just hearing from David.
The 28-day waiting period, and now we're having no criminal record checks for those who want a second or subsequent weapon.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
The assumption that the Adler shotgun introduces something new and more dangerous and so forth is utterly false. I don't mind people having their own opinions, but you can't have your own facts. You can't create your own facts. The Adler is a lever-action 12-gauge shotgun. They have been on the market in Australia for 100 years. 12-gauge shotguns have been around forever.
Yeah, but this rapid-fire style?
Yes, this is the 3rd on the market. The 3rd. It's not even the first of its kind. And the 5-shot magazine is widely available. Right. All they're arguing about is whether an extra 2 shots are going to make a difference.
Well, with respect, I don't care about the mechanics of that gun. I don't understand what you're saying in terms of how it works. But I look at that video and I say, why does anyone in Australia need to be able to fire off that many bullets that quickly? Well, who needs it?
Well, the why do you need it argument is very authoritarian. Why do you need a golf club? Why do you need anything? Why do you need a car?
You can kill a lot of people really quickly, like we're seeing in the US with a gun like that.
Why do you need a car that goes over the speed limit? You can kill a lot of people very quickly with a car that goes over the speed limit.
This is why we need to examine what the basis of giving licences are all about, and why these guns are in the hands of good people, not Martin Bryant's. Okay, our gun laws were framed and are currently run on the basis that everyone who wants a gun legally, is tested, is background checked, is a lunatic.
No.
That's exactly the way it was based, and that's exactly the way it's based.
Well, they get treated like that.
We get treated that way.
No one says that about farmers. Farmers have got a legitimate need for guns.
But that's the way the gun laws are framed.
That's the way the gun laws are framed. A single bullet to kill a pig, a fox, a feral animal.
That's the way the gun laws are framed.
To acknowledge that there is a possibility.
1996 was framed on the basis of a rush of emotion and a political opportunist named John Howard.
OK, but to acknowledge that there is a possibility that someone might be a lunatic is not to say that everyone is under suspicion of being a lunatic or that anyone is being accused of being a lunatic.
That's exactly the way the law is framed, and that's exactly the way it's run.
Well, Robert, the political opportunism here is people like Ricky Muir, who are running for re-election in the Senate, who's got out there and irresponsibly advertised this gun solely for the purpose to appeal to the shooters' vote in Victoria, where he's been a senator. That's as irresponsible and opportunistic a thing as you'll ever see in politics.
I take that as a valid comment, Mark. But the point is this: the real opportunism, the real free advertising for the Adler started last year when Senator Keenan decided to beef it all up and started going for the Adler.
Well, let's have no more Ricky Muir videos.
We have to start wrapping this pretty soon. I know you've just been trying to jump in with one last thing to say there, Sam. What would you like to say just as your parting words to the gentleman here?
Look, Gun Control Australia understands that most gun owners out here have no intention of hurting anyone, and we agree. However, if there's something that we can do as a community to reduce gun deaths and to stop people from experiencing such horrendous grief, then we should do it.
I don't think anyone would disagree
We don't argue with that at all.
Okay.
Control the person, not the gun.
Control the person, not the gun.
Okay, well, listen, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us and sharing your views on that. No doubt our viewers will have many
sure
of
they
their
will.
own.